Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show to talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of the Blacklist. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. But first and foremost, we're dealing with the aftermath of Harold's situation from the last episode. Obviously, he's going to be in front of a court. Obviously, because of his history, they're hoping that he'll kind of get some leniency, that he won't have to kind of suffer any particular time. They were even hoping for no bail and stuff like that. But the problem is, and the rub of it all is, cool, his record has been spotless up until now, but there's also that 10-year gap of, the secret hush-hush of what he actually does for the government, the whole Reddington being. And I think, in all honesty, if that ever came out in court, it would actually hurt his case so much more. It's like, wow, no matter what the circumstances are, you are working with the most wanted criminal in the world. Well, definitely here in the U.S. on the FBI's most wanted list, at the top of it, in fact. But he's also a well-renowned international criminal that you're working with for the past 10 years, and obviously, if you start getting into the ins and outs of their operation plus he also benefits from some of it, so it would not have, it actually would have hurt Harold even more, so it's kind of a good thing that didn't come up in court, because we've already seen what happens when the whole FBI and Raymond deal gets brought up in court. It turns into a whole shit show, so we've already been down that route before. Let's make sure we don't go down that route again. They're going to make doubly sure that doesn't come up in court again. Especially after these recent circumstances. So, things aren't going the way Harold was kind of hoping they would. In fact, his bail is $300,000. And later on, they come to him saying that he can take a plea deal. He has to plead guilty, but he'll only serve 2 years, because if he goes to court, he can face up to 15 years. The fact of the matter is, he may have to, accepting that 2 years means he'd also lose his job and everything, but this way he also doesn't want to testify against Lou. It's like, Lou would never testify against me, so I'm not going to do it to him. Sadly, Lou immediately was like, oh yeah, I'm going to testify against you, which Harold's like, dude, what are you doing? Fact of the matter is, I would have never testified against you. He's like, I've got 2 teenage boys to look after, and he's like, I've got a child to look after too, but it seems like you weren't even thinking about my circumstances. Like, you knew I was going to have your back because you had mine, but it's like, and then it also turns into everyone's looking out for themselves, because Harold's like, I didn't tell you to tamper that evidence. He's like, yeah, I did that because you were my friend. And it's like, yeah, but sadly, look where we are now. So it's like, I'm just going to have to remember, I've got someone to take care of too, and ends up walking away. So I was kind of worried about Lou. Once again, there's still the possibility, but it seems like Lou's just kind of like, yep, I was just trying to do the right thing, and now we're both in kind of a sucky compromise position. So that didn't work out so well. And now because of that, though, Harold actually lost his deal, that 2-year deal that they were going to try and break with him because of Lou. They're actually taking that off the table now, so. Because I think they still would have probably potentially, because the reason why Lou did it is because he didn't want to take the chance they would still throw the book at him, his involvement in all of this. To be fair, Harold did everything he could to keep Lou out of this. He even got Cynthia to agree that no charges would be brought up against Lou, but I guess Lou was maybe getting pressured to testify, or maybe just to assure that he didn't know, how do I know Harold's not going to compromise himself and, try to save himself by screwing me over? It's like, well, I might as well screw him over first, so everyone's just looking after themselves. No, Harold tried to make sure everyone was okay. He made sure Charlene was taken care of, that her lying to an officer would never backlash on her. And so, because Charlene's like, right, this is all kind of Red's fault. He brought this into your lives, but it's like, no, I made my choices, so I have to I have to accept the consequences of it. I forced you to lie to a detective. That's going to be on me. I have to pay for what I've done. And so, while all this is going down, it's like, right, so who's going to be in charge in the meantime? Well, Aram is, and he's like, wait, what? No, I can't lead. And Charlotte's like, well, you better figure it out. It's not what any of us want, but the job is yours. This is what Harold wanted. Which I love that he's saying, hey guys, I'm going to be leading, but I'm more of a figurehead. This obviously should be yours. And I'm surprised they didn't lean into it this episode, but Wrestler was kind of like, nah, it's fine. I guess he said, right, I have my chance, plus I guess with everything he's going on right now, Wrestler's probably like, I'm not really I don't want to be the leader, take charge. Plus, it kind of happened last episode, and I don't think he really jumped on it. Maybe he just feels like, I'm not ready to be in that position yet. Maybe eventually, but Aram being the one taking charge, and it's like, right, dishing out orders, because Reddington is like, oh, congratulations and everything to Aram, and he ends up bringing them the new Blacklist during this episode, and it's Helen, but instead of taking Helen down, we're actually going to help her because the FBI arrested people who are going to sell, like, there were people she hired and was working with, she helped in some shape or form because they're going down and they're trying to sell her out. So in turn for Reddington helping her make that disappear, she's going to help Reddington break into Mount Bastion, which is basically essentially a mountain-based bank of sorts, more so like high security place for like criminals to stash their stuff. And side note, that actress who plays Helen, I've seen her in something super recent. Maybe it's not recent, but it feels fairly recent, where she played someone's mom, and I can't place it. I don't remember what it is. It feels like it was something super recent, too, and I can't think of what it was off the top of my head. Because she's one of those actresses where you're like, you've seen her and stuff, you just can't place it off the top of my head of what I know her from. I swear, too, whatever she was doing, I don't think she had her accent. I think she did an American accent for whatever it is I'm thinking of. Maybe? I legitimately can't remember. It'd take too long to really kind of deep dive into that and try to think back to what it was. But so Reddington wants the team to just kind of help that kind of disappear, make the FBI's case disappear. But Aram's like, no, he has his morals. And he's like, okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to send a team to investigate to find out, like, what's going on with her case and stuff. But he's not too keen on the whole aspect of making it disappear, especially when they find out she potentially stole some RPGs that she's going to arm a certain group of terrorists with. They're like, yeah, we can't really sign off on that. But for Reddington, it's like, no, she would never do that. I know her. You've got to trust me. But Aram's like, yeah, I know, but the fact of the matter is I don't feel comfortable doing this. And it's like, yeah, but Cooper would. Harold knows when to compromise in certain situations and would trust my judgment on this. Trust me. But Aram, and that ends up being a big part of this episode, no matter how much no matter how much Reddington pushed, Aram would always stay firm and center on his position. To be fair, this isn't the first time that's ever, it didn't get violent, but let's not forget the whole Samar situation, like how all that went down, and the aftermath of that, like it led to a Aram versus Reddington situation, and how like he kind of went a little bit for Reddington's jugular. So we've kind of been down this route before, but obviously like Aram's always, out of anyone, had the most positive relationship. That was probably the most like bad things I've ever gotten between Aram and Reddington, but other than that, like that situation, they've always had a pretty decent relationship amongst anyone. I'd say like probably like the only relationship obviously better would be like, I'd almost make the argument, there's almost like there's this equal footing of like Cooper pushes back a lot when it comes to Reddington, so they have enough back and forth and everything that I don't know. It's just, I guess because Cooper does like end up having to be the one that makes the final decision, so him and Reddington have a lot more common ground in that regard. So Aram has always been like, right, let's help out. It's part of the investigation. So like they've always technically been on the same side. Once again, with the exception of that, how everything ended up with Samar. With the exception of all of that, they've typically always ended up on the same side of things. So just to see them butt heads like this is so fascinating. Because Reddington did ask Helen about it, but she was like, right, what you're hearing about me is wrong. Like, that's not the case at all. I would never be involved with all that. And Reddington believes her because his business is all about trust. And I love that Aram is like talking to him in his office. He's like, no, sit down, it's your seat. He's like, it doesn't feel right. He's like, no, must be a button or something on the side to it. He's like, no, not the seat. And Reddington was like, oh, right. No, I'm sure. Just give it some time. You'll get used to it. It's like, Aram is just super against all of this. Even at one point, Cooper was like taking his stuff. He's like, no, let me get that for you, sir. He takes it back to his office. He's like, what, you're not coming back? He's like, no. You have to come back. I can't keep doing this. I don't want your job, sir. We need you back. The team is incomplete without you. So, but ultimately, Reddington was able to convince Aram to work with him because it's like, right, you want to find this information about the person responsible for blackmailing Harold and also killing Elizabeth. We need to find them, and the only way we're going to get access to this is if we work with Helen and with this whole Mount Bastion thing. It's like, I can't make that disappear anymore, but I can make Helen disappear, make her disappear, have her a good life, so that the FBI can never find her. That way, it's a neat compromise, because this way, the FBI's evidence doesn't go away, but she disappears, and it'll just be an ongoing investigation type of thing. So it's kind of almost, in Reddington's eyes, I'm sure it's like, it's a win-win. It's more so a win for Helen and kind of a major loss for the FBI, but it's fine. So, but I do like the almost like heist element to the episode. It's not the biggest heist, but it's just kind of a small heist. I'm curious, we only get a little look into some of the stuff that Reddington has stashed in his own place at Mount Bastion. We see like stacks of money and stuff like that. Makes you wonder, like, I guess maybe some like super high value stuff. But they ultimately end up going to, the big reason for going there in the first place is because Reginald Cole had one as well, because this is like the only means to they have of this is the only next step they have, because it's like, right, finding a shooter, super impossible. Unidentified person, that bike is most likely in a million pieces now. Any shells probably don't have any fingerprints or anything, so all that's like the normal investigation side of things has probably a dead end. But Reginald Cole's like place it, because he's a cop. Even if he is a formal cop and he's on the scummy side, they'd never actively let him have essentially what is essentially a large safe room at Mount Sebastian. Not South Sebastian, but Bastion. And it turns out it must most likely belong to his employer, who allowed him access to it. They go in there, and the only thing of note they find are CDs. These CDs were meant for Elizabeth. They were everything that if Liz needed to know anything when it came to running Reddington's operations, these were supposed to be things that she could have access to. But the only people who should have access to it, I think he said him and Dembe should be the only one, or at the very least, like, it should only be Liz, which part of me is like, right, it would have to be someone that's intricate to your operation. I'd assume it'd be Marvin. That's why I'm like, Marvin seems more and more suspicious as things go on, just because I feel like something happened in that 2 years and your return just kind of screwed up everything he was building towards and stuff. Well, once again, this all goes back to Liz's death, so that means this was set up well in advance. So maybe the whole reason was maybe Marv thought he was doing the right thing. Because that ended up being a conversation with Weecha, was like, right, who could be the person who did this? Like, if they're doing this against me, it's like, they could have easily just come after, like, Reddington at any point in time. It's like, do they have special plans for him? I think even said, do they love him? And Reddington's like, maybe all three. And maybe that's it. Killing Elizabeth was because she was God, what's the word I'm looking for? A hindrance to everything that Reddington had built up. It's like, right, you're about to leave everything to her. So maybe there's other people you should leave it to, or very much you should keep doing what you're doing, because it's such a symbiotic relationship that Reddington's business has, because it's tied up with so many other people. So if it was Marvin, maybe Marvin's justification was removing Elizabeth from the equation, making it so that Van Dyke dies and all that dies with Van Dyke, and so Reddington keeps going. Maybe he wasn't counting on Reddington leaving, or maybe that was a calculated element to the whole thing. Still in the dark about a lot of that, so we'll have to wait and see where things kind of go on that front. And luckily, Helen, they were able to get out of there, no problems. Sadly, Aram had everything set up so that Helen would be arrested immediately after it was all said and done. And Reddington, not too happy about that. Reddington's like, right, if you're going to be like this, I can't work with you, Aram, because he's like, I won't compromise my morals. And obviously, Reddington's making the whole comparison to Cooper about how, right, he knows when and when not to compromise and such. And in fact, Aram throws it back at Reddington, being like, yo, I might not be able to work with you if you're not good with the way I operate. I'm not Director Cooper, this is me, and I just will not budge on this. And I love that he didn't tell anyone else on the team, including Denbei, because it's like, right, I didn't want anyone else to suffer Mr. Reddington's wrath. Once again, I mean, to be fair, like except for Park, I was about to say, I think Park is the only person that's never been on the other end of Reddington's wrath to some extent. I think everyone except for Park, he's always been in a position where he can basically hold stuff over our head, or, you know, try to be the so-called angel on her show. Because I love that even when he's talking to Harold at the end of the episode, he's like, right, I'm the guardian angel and angel of death rolled in one. It's like, very, very true. But some agents show up to get Helen. I'm like, are we going to find out? Like, I was like, are they going to be Helen's people? Or turns out they're Reddington's people. And I love that when the agents in charge show up, and it's like, wait, we just gave him to, no, we're those real agents. It's like, cool, he did that. I even love it later on when Aram was like, yeah, I stuck to my morals. Granted, and then Reddington sit two fake agents in here to step on and stomp all over it, but still, I love it. So everything, well, he got Helen out, and it's like, okay, cool. Helen gets to disappear, but then he has a sit down with Helen, because he's like, right, Weecha ended up talking to one of those people involved in all of this, and it turns out you super were behind this. He's like, the fact is, you lied to me. Not once, twice. Our relationships are built off of trust. I hope whatever you did it for was worth, like, destroying the trust between us, because Reddington doesn't do well when he doesn't trust people. Like, that, this, with the nature of this business, it can't be helped. You had multiple opportunities to tell me the truth, but you lied to my face, straight to my face, and we kind of understand. She says the reason why she did it wasn't for money, it was out of revenge. Like, I think the people she was going to send those RPGs to would have been battling the people who were responsible for killing her family, or her son, or something like that. I don't remember, but, like, that's what the RPGs were related to. It's because someone connected in all this. I think she was trying to get RPGs to a group that's against the group that ended up killing her son, and it was all about, I think, revenge or whatever. And so they mistaken him for kind of like a spy or something, and they beheaded him. And he's like, I'm sorry about your son, but you should have told me the truth. And she's like, Reddington, like, what if your only child was, in the moment she's saying that, I'm like, oh yeah, he's in your exact position. She's like, I know you would have done anything. You would have raised the earth to get revenge. And he's like, you're right. But, because he was like, if you were in my position, what would you do? Is what he kind of said. Like, when it comes to whether, because he's like, right, I can't let you go because you know too much. You know too much of my operations and stuff, because you are a close confidant, so I can't just let you go. I was like, wow, you about to kill her? I was like, ugh. But then she says the whole thing, well, he concludes with the whole thing of like, you're right. If I were you and you were me, what would you do? And oh god, what was it you said? I really liked it a lot. It was basically the point of, oh, if you were me and I were you, I would never lie to you, because I would, and be basically inferring, I'm me. I would never, if I were in your position, I would never lie to me. I would never, because that would be the worst possible thing you could do, is sour this relationship, because you know who I am. You know how I got to where I got. You know how I handle business. So Reddington doesn't seem like he's going to kill her. He's letting her go. But it's like, right, don't ever, whatever, this is our last transaction. Whatever is between us is done. Because, yes, he feels sympathetic, because he understands I would do the exact same thing, because I am literally in a process of doing the exact same thing. My only child is gone. The only thing he has left in his world is his grandchild, so I've got to do whatever it takes. So he also ended up posting Harold's bail got him out when that 2-year deal was still in play, and he goes to Charlotte. He say like, right, I need you to like fix this, and she's like, no, we can't. Like, Harold's doing all that he can. I'm doing all I can from the legal standpoint. And Reddington's like, okay, I see you there. But how about this? Like, when people are undercover, there's no, like, any illegal stuff they do kind of gets a little swept under the rug because they were undercover. It's like, yeah, but there's nothing to prove that he was. It's like, well, you can back channel some of that, backdate some of that, and make it seem like he was undercover the entire time, and that ends up sweeping a lot of this on the rug. Which Charlotte's like, no, I'm not going to compromise myself. That'd be crossing a line. Which even I'm like, well, you crossed the line recently. Like, you're not going to stop yourself. It's like, oh, she doesn't have to worry about stopping herself because Reddington was like, oh yeah, here's a recording of you when I was torturing someone. It's like, right, you wanted to make someone pay who was hurting your daughter-in-law, who was hurting your granddaughter. So, and just like, Charlotte's like, right, I thought you were helping me because you cared. And it's almost like, did you forget who you were dealing with? Sympathetic or not, when I see an opportunity, I'm going to take the opportunity. He's probably like, I'd hope I never had to play this chip, but being in my line of business, you always have to be ready for, take advantage of every opportunity. I was hoping I'd never have to play this chip. Probably hoping, he probably knew on some level he was always going to have this chip in his back pocket and would need to play it someday. Probably wasn't expecting to have to play it in 2 weeks, because that was apparently the events of, not last episode, but the episode before last, or 2 weeks ago, so. Funny how that works. Regardless. But because of this, they weren't able to get Harold out of, like, getting any jail time. And he had actually surrendered himself to his fate. He even went and told Agnes the truth. He's like, right, why you try to teach that lesson to a child from the very beginning at such a young age of something, or consequences of doing something wrong? Because as a child, I mean, obviously it depends on the severity of it, but as a child, typically you do something wrong, it's a little bit of a slap on the wrist. But as an adult, there has to be consequences, and he wants to be held responsible for what he does. And so he was telling, just this being a reminder to Agnes to always do the right thing, because he's like, right, I did something bad because I thought it was the right thing at the time, but it doesn't make it right just because I wanted it to be the right thing. Wanted to believe it was the right thing, so... But luckily, it's all resolved. Granted, Reddington and Charlotte are not on good terms anymore. I'm sure she's just very like, fuck you, Reddington. And it's like, yeah. I love that she was like, you son of a bitch. He was like, yes, but to be fair, you never met my father. So luckily that all resolved. And now Harold's back and it's like, yay! But he's like, no, I'm not taking over the position. I've been basically been given a stay of execution. I have a month to try and get this all resolved and find some evidence in this investigation and such. So, and until that time frame, Aram is still the boss. He's like, right, you actually tell me what to do and I'll just pretend like I'm bossing you around. I'm like, I love you, Aram. I love you so much, my dude. This is your episode to shine. Harold and Reddington have their sit down later on. Once again, the conversation about, okay, so he doesn't think he can work with Aram at the task force anymore, but Cooper's like, right, he did what he was supposed to. It's like, also, cut him some, because he's like, right, Aram stuck true to his values, and the fact is that the reason why our relationship works the way it is, yes, you had the freedom as a criminal to kind of like skirt a lot of those lines and cut the corners, but we as FBI, we kind of have to be held to that, to our standards and be held responsible for our actions. And he was like, right, I'd actually forgotten about that, and it almost led to me going to jail. I almost paid the price for it. So his head is kind of more on straight now on, remembering where that line is and letting it not get blurred, especially now because he handled all of this on his own, and now he's correcting that by now he's working with the task force, because now he doesn't have to worry about going this alone. He has 4 of the sets of eyes, Park, Wrestler, Dembe, and Aram to help out. So, and plus we've got Reddington on the case, considering this all ties into Liz. But I love that Cooper was like, yeah, just give Aram a chance. He's like, to be fair, I am a little biased in this situation. He is my boss, so I'm going to have his back. But also, he's pretty new to the job, so give him some time or something like that. So I thought that was just kind of a nice little conversation they had at the end there. But it does beg some interesting questions, though, about... because Reddington can't answer them, once again, of how did whoever is working with whoever hired Reginald Cole, how did they get access to those DVDs? The only people who should have access to that was like, once again, either, I think it was like Reddington or Liz, or like Reddington and Dimmick could be the only ones who accessed them. But why would they bring that out? So whoever it is, I guess, is trying to be the next Reddington, trying to fill that void. Whoever they are, maybe they couldn't do it on their own. They didn't have the skills and know-how. I mean, which is almost befitting considering what is Reddington? Nothing more than a work of fiction, because obviously this Reddington is not the real Reddington. It's, someone took the story of Raymond Reddington and turned him into this international criminal to build up his reputation and legend in the criminal world. But truth be told, I think it is interesting that someone might be kind of doing the same thing here with those DVDs and stuff, trying to build themselves into a legend and trying to take everything that would have been Liz's way of operating the business. Because once again, whoever it is still has like a majority stake in him, because going back to that the night market and stuff, there being someone who's taking advantage of that situation and owns like a good chunk of his company when he walked away for those 2 years. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.